Brilliance Audio presents
Second Generation by Howard Fast. Author's dedication for Jerry and Dottie. Part 1. Homecoming. Pete Lomas's mackerel drifter was an old, converted coal-fired steam tug of 122 tons, purchased as war surplus in 1919. It cost him so little then that he was able to sell its oversized engine for scrap and replace it with a modern oil-burning plant. He named it Golden Gate, packed his wife and kids and household goods into it, and sailed from San Francisco Bay down to San Pedro. There he rented a berth for the tug and went into the mackerel business. His wife suffered from asthma, and her doctor determined that the San Francisco area was too damp. Lomas then decided to make the move to Los Angeles County, and he bought a house in Downey. He laid out his drift nets with a 3-man crew, and until the Depression came in the 30s, he did well. And even after 1929, he managed to make a decent living out of his boat and to pay his crew living wages as well. Years before, he had worked for Dan Lavette as the captain of his fleet of crabbing boats on Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. And when, in 1931, he stumbled on Lavette on the dock at San Pedro, broke and hungry, he offered him a job. Now, in 1934, Dan had been working for Lomas steadily for 3 years. Today, the 1st of June, 1934, Dan Lavette came off the mackerel boat at 10 o'clock in the morning and got into his 1930 Ford sedan to drive to his home in Westwood, where he lived with his second wife, an American-born Chinese woman named Mei Ling, their son Joseph, and her parents. Their small house was a few blocks from the University of California campus in Los Angeles, where Mei Ling worked at the library. Dan was a big man, 6 feet and 1 inch in height, heavily built, but without fat, broad in the shoulders, his skin tanned and weather-beaten by the sun and the salt water. He had a good head of curly hair, mostly gray, dark eyes under straight brows, high cheekbones, and a wide, full mouth. To the 2 men who comprised the crew of the mackerel boat, along with Dan and Pete Lomas, Lavette was a plain, soft-spoken, easy-going, and competent fisherman. He never lost his temper, and he never complained, regardless of how brutal or back-breaking the conditions were, and that in itself was most unusual among fishermen. Of his background they knew only that years before he had fished with Pete Lomas in San Francisco Bay. One of them was a Chicano, the other an Italian who spoke little English, and they were not inordinately curious. As for Lomas, who knew a great deal more about Dan Lavette, he kept his peace. The Chicano, whose name was Juan Gonzalez, while only 22 years old, was alert enough to realize that Dan Lavette was unlike any of the other fishermen on the wharf. He said to him one day,
"Danny, how come a man like you..."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?